woman rose from her watery grave at the bottom of Lake Pontchartrain. It was like she was determined to lead an investigation into her own murder. But before cops could find her killer, they had to find out who she was. Veteran New Orleans homicide detective Marco Dema spent more than 25 years tackling some of the hardest murder cases the Big Easy has ever seen.
I was directly responsible for handling over 800 homicides and was indirectly involved in probably another 2,000.
In 2003, Marco retired from the New Orleans Police Department, but he couldn't give up detective work. He quickly took another challenging role, investigating cold cases for the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office. One morning, Marco was beginning to choose which case to work on, when one case chose him, Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe. Here's what happened. Marco received an alert from the National Crime Information Center showing a possible match between the 1986 Jane Doe and a missing girl from Elyria, Ohio, named Lisa Sexton.
You got a case that's been sitting dormant for essentially, 17 years. And then suddenly, someone calls you, or you get a notification, your excitement button goes off.
Marco quickly dug into the Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe file, hoping to extract whatever clues he could about her brutal murder. And here's what he found.
We believe that possibly the bag that was placed over her head is what was used to kill her. This person, I feel certain, knew the victim. The fact that she was pregnant, suggests that possibly this could be a boyfriend or husband. Why is this ring missing? Could it have been someone's name inscribed on the inside of the ring? Could it have been a date inscribed inside the ring? I think the ring is another identifying point.
There are bilateral silicone breast implants removed, which are 200 cc's in volume each. There are no identifiable markings or serial numbers indicated on these implants, period.
The more Marco studied this horrible crime, the more he believed the victim could be Ohio's Lisa Sexton. Her age and physical characteristics, height, weight, and hair color, seemed like a perfect match to the lady in the lake. If Marco could positively ID the victim, he knew he'd be one step closer to finding her killer. So he contacted the Elyria, Ohio PD to see what evidence they had that could possibly ID as Jane Doe as their Lisa.
Great, so you have the DNA and the mother and also the dental records? What I got a girl in a plot.
At that point, what I knew is we had a person in a grave, and essentially that was it. There was no DNA taken. In 1986, we didn't know about DNA.
Marco knew that the only way he was going to find out if his Jane Doe was the missing girl from Ohio was to obtain her DNA. The only way to do that? Exhume the body. But first, he had to find it. And it wouldn't be easy. She'd been laid to rest in an unmarked grave. Fortunately for Marco, the crime scene investigator who originally worked the case left him a trail to follow.
What we way ahead in this particular instance, which helped us immensely, was a photograph of the gravesite. If you look at the photograph, there's one cross and a bunch of trees. And essentially that was it.
Armed with the picture, Marco drove to the cemetery.
There were probably 100 crosses. When I saw all those crosses, for a brief second, I knew I was in trouble. There were trees in the background of where this cross was, and some electrical support lines for some telephone poles near the cemetery.
Marco used the old photo matched against the new landscape and amazingly pinpointed exactly where she was buried. It was now time to dig. On a hot September day in 2003, after 17 years in the dirt, Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe was unearthed. It takes special skills to examine skeletal remains that have been buried for so long, and Marco knew one person who could handle the job, a forensic anthropologist known as the Bone Lady.
When I look at bones, I think of the bones as telling a story. They can tell us the age, the sex, the race of a person. They can tell us how tall that person is. So the skeleton itself is a fascinating story with a lot of puzzles involved.
But when Mary Mannheim put the puzzle pieces together in this case, she quickly realized they didn't fit. Mary spotted metal fillings in Lisa Sexton's x-rays. But when Mary examined Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe's teeth, there were no metal fillings anywhere. Mary now knew the two women weren't the same person.
Oh, don't tell me that. The dental records don't match.
It was a big blow for Marco, but he knew that Mary could still help him in the case. So Mary teamed up with a forensic artist to create this bust of what the lady in the lake may have looked like. It was then scanned into a computer and enhanced to make her look even more lifelike. You can see details of how the process works at our website, AMW.com, as well as much more information about the testing the Bone Lady did on Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe's skeleton.
Bones don't lie. We just have to be able, as forensic anthropologists, to tell the story that they're telling us.
And Jane Doe's bones told Mary a new story about who she was, a story filled with fascinating new clues. Now, what did you learn when you were working on this lady?
We learned some amazing things, John. Looking at old autopsy photos, there's some suggestion that she may have had some reconstructive work done on her nose. We aren't certain about that because the photos are so old. But one of the most amazing things we discovered had to do with her right hip. She had injured that hip some time before she died, and the bone was changing. The appearance of that bone told us that it was an old injury. And so that healing, or the process itself, gives us a clue as to what may have happened to her before she died, and maybe a clue as to who she is.
Marco was hoping the new clues were enough for our viewers to identify Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe when we profiled the case earlier this year.
One of the things I knew was it was going to generate a lot of information.
A lot of the folks are calling about breast implants having serial numbers.
I was just getting ready to notice it. They didn't have any serial numbers on them, which back then they did, now they do. So the program did what I thought it would do. We have a lot of call-ins on people who are missing, reported missing, so we have a lot of legwork to do. Hopefully that, we'll have some successful conclusion with the information we generated tonight.
Marco then began the daunting task of going through the leads one by one.
You hope the person calling gives enough information that you can work with, but more often than not, they don't.
But that would soon change. Marco was chasing down another dead-end lead when his phone began ringing. The sweet voice on the other end of the line belonged to an AMW tipster named Brenda Hoover, and she had an unbelievable tale for Marco that made him think there could actually be a light at the end of the tunnel.
She was supposed to come back.
She goes on to tell a story about how she used to frequent a Waffle House here in the Slidell area, and she became somewhat friendly with a girl that worked there. The girl identified herself by the name of Jennifer Goss. Brenda went on to explain that there were so many similarities between this Jennifer Goss and our victim. At that point, you're thinking you're on to something, and you're very, very close. You just have to take it step by step and try and see if this is the girl.
Could it be we're finally close to solving this mystery? Could the Lake Pontchartrain Jane Doe really be Jen Goss? Somehow, cops had to match the name to the body, And their biggest clue turned out to be this picture of a baby. We'll show you why when we come back.